So thank you so much for inviting me today. It's been so big a pleasure to listen to you all. So I hope you're ready for the last session. Before we start the panel session, I will just briefly tell you a bit about Nordforsk. So if I can have my slides on the screen. So Nordforsk is a research funding institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers. And our role is to facilitate research collaboration in the Nordic region that makes an impact, is of high international quality, and delivers Nordic added value. And in more recent years, we have also had a lot of collaboration with the Baltic research councils. And this is a picture of my great colleagues in Oslo. We are located there. In collaboration with the national funders in the Nordic and sometimes also Baltic countries, Nordforsk coordinates joint calls for proposals on research topics suggested by the national research councils. And this slide provides you an overview of Nordforsk's current research areas. In Nordforsk, we have a special funding model. We receive our basic funding from the Nordic Council of Ministers, but we require funding from research councils in at least 3 countries before we can open a call. And Nordforsk's role is to negotiate with national funders to contribute to a coming funding pot. And then research-performing organizations can seek funding from Nordforsk in open calls for proposals. And grants are awarded on scientific quality and the expected Nordic or Nordic-Baltic added value. Last year, Nordforsk had a Nordic-Baltic migration integration call, which resulted in 7 projects to be funded. And these 4 projects, which I have listed on this slide, includes Nordic-Baltic research projects. And the first one is about the linguistic integration of refugee children and their families from Ukraine. And they will especially look in Sweden, Norway, Estonia, and Lithuania. Their output from this research project is expected to be science-based recommendation for practitioners and policymakers. We also have one other project, the Transcare Net, about who takes care of the elderly when we leave. And then we have another project on political inclusion in an area of radicalization. And the 4th project, the promoting access to health service, focus on improving refugee women's access to healthcare in Norway, Sweden, and Estonia. And it aims to understand their health-seeking behavior and barriers they face, especially regarding mental health, vaccination, and cancer screening. And this project aims to develop a digital solution that provides refugee women with an easy-to-understand and tailored health information to help them better understand how the healthcare system works. And these projects have just started, and we expect to have their results ready in 2027 or 2028. And to learn more about these projects, please visit our website. Nordforsk has also supported several initiatives on Ukrainian refugee integration in the Nordic-Baltic region, and a network to help rebuild Ukraine. And this network is called Romada. And one of our panelists, Aadne, Aasland, will tell you more about this important network later on. 2 reports on refugee integration and governance has also been published by 2 of our research projects. The projects are named Influx and Norwegian. And the projects have published several policy briefs on refugee integration in the Nordic-Baltic countries, which we also encourage you to read. And you can scan this QR code. Okay, now we will continue with the panel session. On stage, we have invited 3 experts who will tell you about their important research. The panel will explore how data on refugee and immigrant integration in the Nordic-Baltic region can be used to develop solutions, improve in policies, and inform decision makers. So please welcome Aadne Aasland on stage from the Norwegian Institute for Urban and Regional Research, the Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway. And please also welcome Darta Pelse from the think tank PROVIDUS in Latvia. And at last but not least, please also welcome Fjóla, María, Lárusdóttir from the Education and Training Service Center in Iceland. Okay, Aadne, we will start by you. You are a research professor, and you are also a leader of a working group on refugees and migrants, and a member of a steering group at the ROMADA network. And ROMADA stands for Nordic-Baltic Knowledge-Based Input Network to the Rebuilding of Ukraine. And as I said, you're also a researcher in the Nordforsk funded project Norwegian, which stands for Integration or Return for Ukrainian Refugees. And both the ROMADA network and the project is funded by Nordforsk. Aadne, could you start briefly by telling us about the ROMADA network?
Sure. Thank you for the invitation, and thanks for the opportunity to present ROMADA. When the Russian full-scale invasion took place in February 2022, there was a big demand for knowledge about Ukraine in our societies. And we were quite a few researchers in various institutions, but we were all scattered around in the different countries, and we thought that it would be good to join forces. And first we did so nationally, like in Norway, we had established Ukrainet, which is a network on research on Ukraine, and then in Sweden they did similar things, and they approached us because they had heard about us, and then we thought, why don't we make this a bigger thing? And we thought it might be possible to approach Nordforsk with this idea. And Nordforsk said, yes, but why don't you also include the Baltic countries? And we thought, wow, this is brilliant. And they had some funding available because funding of Russian activities had been going down, so they stopped, and there was some funding available, and we were really happy that we could use that for establishing ROMADA network. We wanted not to be a simple research network. We are used to going to conferences and present academic papers to each other, but really to have impact on getting to spread our knowledge on what's going on in Ukraine and also in our own countries, because we have quite big numbers of refugees. I call them refugees, displaced in our countries. The network is really working on 2 different pillars. One is that we have annual conferences, but those conferences are also not like ordinary academic conferences. We seek to have dialogue with various key stakeholders like policymakers, civil society organizations, businesses and so on who are working on Ukraine, and to transfer this knowledge that we have into policy relevant knowledge. So part of these conferences are devoted to that, and then we all, as researchers, we need training on how to do that. So we have had like teaching in communication skills on how to transfer this this knowledge into something that users that I mentioned can use. We have had conferences. First one started in my university, Oslo Met. Then we had last fall, we had a conference in Riga. In Riga, we discussed issues like EU integration. We discussed the mental health, both of those remaining in Ukraine and of the refugees who have arrived in the Nordic and Baltic area. And also, we wanted to look at refugees, or discuss the refugees not simply as a burden on our societies, but more as a resource in different, as employment, but also how we develop as societies by welcoming Ukrainians into our countries. The Hromada network consists of 6 smaller research groups. We have one group that I lead, which works on refugees and migrants. We have also one working on climate governance. When Ukraine will rebuild, it needs to think about climate and green economy. We have one on Ukrainian EU integration, one on social trends, one on democracy, and the final one on Nordic-Baltic and Ukrainian civil society collaboration and programs. So I think that we also have this second pillar, which is blogs that we produce and where we use research that we have from our research projects and try to write them into smaller blog pieces that can be used by policymakers and civil society organizations and so on. All of our countries have big support programs for Ukraine, and we want those to be as efficient as possible. And we think that we, as researchers who have done research on all of these different topics, can contribute. So you can find in the Hromada website, which is easy to find on the net, you can find our blog pieces which cover issues like mobilization law, what needs to be done for a proper peace agreement. We have several blogs on situation and integration of Ukrainian refugees in our various countries and so on. So these are the main ideas.
Thank you, Aadne, for this, and we will return to you later on to talk about your Nordforsk-funded project, Norwegian, as well. Darta, Pelse, you work as a policy analyst in immigration and integration in the Latvian public think tank called PROVIDUS. You have also been involved in the Foreign One project, and you're currently conducting a study on how Latvian municipalities have received Ukrainian refugees. Latvia, like other Baltic states, has faced a significant influx of refugees since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Could you start by briefly telling about how Latvian municipality responded when the Ukrainian refugees first began arriving, and what were the biggest challenges they faced during this time?
Yes, firstly, thank you for having me here. It's always nice to meet everyone in the Foreign project. But yes, we are now conducting a study on municipal capacity in receiving Ukrainian civilians in Latvia, and building upon the things that were told in previous panels. I would say that the first response was this initial crisis response, because if we look at the numbers of, for example, asylum requests from 1998 until 2024, it's 6,067 asylum requests. But if we look at arrivals from Ukraine as of January 2024, it's approximately 25,000. So the numbers are way larger that the existing system was able to receive. And so the reaction from the central government was to develop this law on assistance of Ukrainian civilians and an action plan for Ukrainian civilians, and this also translates to the local level. As Sulaiman mentioned in the last panel, everything is sort of centralized, and these integration activities are done by NGOs. But as the numbers are way larger than Latvia has ever seen before, there's this transition to the local level. And at the initial response context, this means initial help done by the municipalities. And of course, the number of people arriving, of course, differed in different municipalities. So a lot more people came in eastern municipalities of Latvia and the capital. So they adapted to the situations differently. So and there were a lot of challenges as well, and service design, for example, how to provide this help for so many people, how to, what to do with housing and all of these things. I think this law on assistance of Ukrainian civilians was amended many, many times. And of course, it affected the local level as well. And I would say the largest challenges municipalities faced in this response was lack of previous experience. As I mentioned, the numbers. We also surveyed the municipalities, and the largest part of them did not have any prior experience with receiving newcomers in any way. So Ukrainian response is the first time they face something like this. And also many municipalities have indicated that the constant changes in the legislative framework, especially at the start, first period after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, was something that was challenging because they had to follow the regulatory framework because it affected the amount of assistance or ways they were assisting people arriving to their municipalities, and also data collection. We have seen that data collection is also a challenge. There were data systems. We also did another study on available data on Ukrainian civilians in Latvia, and the things we saw were that many different governmental institutions have many different data on the same things, and this also translates to municipalities as well. So each of the municipalities, we saw different ways of municipalities collecting information, whether they used it or not, whether it was mandated from the national level to fill out the information systems, or was this something that they used in their work. This was also challenging as well. And in the initial crisis response period, many municipalities were talking about burnout as well. So a lot of people are coming, and a lot of new assistance systems need to be designed and adapted in the municipalities, and these risks of burnout were quite significant because in many, especially smaller municipalities, there was one person who was whose number who was contacted, who was in charge, maybe additionally to the existing responsibilities they might have in the municipality.
Thank you. And looking beyond the initial response, what are the main challenges municipalities currently face in promoting integration? And do they have the right tools and capacity to address these challenges?
I would say in terms of legislative framework, it's still a crisis response because the law on assistance of Ukrainian civilians stipulates that the assistance is given as long as there's as long as Russia's full-scale invasion is going on. And so that means there are no overarching goals of long-term integration goals, as it is a temporary protection framework. Which also sort of hinders the long-term integration efforts. But this action plan and the law includes integration measures such as language learning, such as inclusion in the education system, and so on. But there is no goal in terms of integration right now for Ukrainians, and this also translates to the municipalities. And even if the legislative framework is tended to address crisis response related questions, integration is happening in the municipalities anyways. And in theory, municipalities are not obligated to develop these integration systems on a local level. If they have the initiative, they are free to do so, but there's no systemic approach towards involvement of the local level in terms of integration. So some of the municipalities adapt their own ways of providing integration services. In some cases, it's outsourced by the national government and the services are available, or municipalities organize language courses themselves and finance it themselves. It differs. The situations are very, very different, and it, of course, is based on the reality that is on the ground.
Thank you. And based on your research, what is needed to strengthen the municipality's mandate on integration and inclusion in Latvia? And how could this response from the municipalities to the Ukrainian refugee situation be applied to other refugee or migrant groups?
Yeah, I would say it's a decision among different levels of governance in terms of what is in charge of what. What is the municipality's role? What are the roles of the ministries involved in integration? So it's a horizontal policy. And if there's no consensus about who does what, it can get really complicated and, of course, differ among many municipalities and other governmental agencies. And I think this is something that needs to be decided on a political level in terms of long-term goals of integration, and in terms of the roles of each of the stakeholders involved. And I would say that would relate to strengthening the mandate, and it's really important to see whether the municipalities have the capacity to carry out. If there's a mandate for them to or responsibility for them to focus on integration, for example, and to develop locally tailored policies, it's important to see whether they have the capacity, do they have the knowledge, and we have surveyed the municipalities. And if we transition to your second question, the things they said that there are indications that they have gained quite a significant experience in receiving Ukrainian civilians, and this knowledge that they have gained throughout this experience, I don't see why it can't be translated to other groups in terms of service provision, in terms of maybe service design or other things. I would say that this is an opportunity to continue the work that has already continued the work and sort of save the knowledge that's already there right now. And I think the influx of Ukrainian civilians of Latvia has really indicated the large problems the integration system faces, and has given the opportunity to move forward with many very important policies in terms of maybe the cohesive language learning systems and other things, because it really indicated what are the overarching problems within the integration system.
Thank you. That was a really inside overview of how Latvian municipalities navigated in the initial crisis responses and the challenges they faced. And you have given us a clear picture of both the rapid mobilization efforts and the structural gaps that became evident along the way. Okay, we will now continue with an Icelandic project on young immigrants in Iceland and how they can be better included in education, working life, and society. The immigrant population in Iceland has increased significantly from 3.2 in 2000 to 18% in 2022. Fjóla, María, Lárusdóttir, you are a specialist at the Education and Training Service Center in Iceland on adult learning, and you were in the coordinating team for the project Voices of Young Immigrants, Inclusion in Education, Work and Society, which were funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers and the Network for Adult Learning. I know you have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so I will ask Aadne and Darta to please step down. And I will just ask you 2 questions to reply during your presentation, and this tell us briefly about the challenges faced by young adults, immigrants in Iceland, and what kind of solution to the problems they have experienced does your project propose? So, thank you.
Yes, and I will try to answer those. Could I get, it would help, maybe the chairs, because I don't know if you will see all my slides. Maybe just some of them. Thank you. It's so great to be here, and these days have been very informative for me coming from Iceland, where, as Bethina was saying, we have been growing population. Luckily, people want to come and help out, and we are actually, as the OECD statistics showed yesterday, we're over 20% now in 2024, 2025. With immigrants, so this is quite new to us, and it has happened just in these past few years. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this project that we had in the presidency of the Nordic Council of Ministers in 2023. And just to give you a little bit of context, the Education and Training Service Center is owned by the social partners in Iceland. It was established around the group of people who have not completed upper secondary school level education, which was about 35% of people on the labor market in the year 2000. So, and we cooperate with 14 lifelong learning centers who are regional around the country. They are owned by the municipality actors, and they have board of actors that come and talk about, the needs in the area and the regions, because it's very different in Iceland. There are many rural areas. So even though we are small, we have similar challenges as the bigger countries. Can't be escaped for some reason. But the focus of the project, because we are the Education and Training Service Center, we have specific tools that we have been developing through the years. And this was marked by a service agreement that we have with the Ministry of Education and Children. So the main focus is on study pathways for this target group, and also on validation of prior learning towards shortening of study paths. But now we also have validation of prior learning against specific job criteria. And we also have career guidance. So these are measures funded through this cooperative partnership. So hence the actual emphasis that we have is on recognizing the skills that people have with them at this specific point in time, and so they can be used further. And then also to see how we can work better with formal documents, which has actually, the Nordic office has been so efficient now with the large group of Ukrainians coming. So that has helped us a lot to get better at that, react to the needs of the target group in general, immigrants within our realm, and learn from the experience of the Nordic countries. This was a huge cooperative initiative, and support increased inclusion into the labor market and in society. There was, in the beginning of the project, we were occupied with the labor market focus and language, but then we actually changed the name of the project during the project phase into inclusion in education, work, and society, because all of these are important. You can't just focus on one. That's one of the learning moments we had. And of course, strengthen the cooperation of actors. We were working very closely with the Nordic Network for Lifelong Learning, which used to have this name, Nordic Network for Adult Learning. It's changed now. So extremely important cooperation with the Nordics, learning from what they had done, and to get ideas on how to proceed and get people on board. So they have been supporting us also with the production of main products and publishing them. So you can find that on the nll.org, highly recommended website to visit. So this is the model that we focused on. One of the networks in NLL had been using this model of design-based research, and when they were focusing on digital inclusion, which is a huge also factor that we need to look into. So we developed a similar process around this idea, this research-based design, with the end users in the middle. So it's a model that focuses on a situation or experience of a target group. That's in the middle, and then you have these collaborative efforts bringing forth the voices of the end users to make the services appropriate for their needs. So it helps in making things more meaningful and sustainable. And it's a learning process, so you step into it and yourself just on a ship and you don't see the shore ahead, but it's certainly a good process to take. It's a journey to take on with other actors. So you can see we started with the problem identification. We had focus groups with people around the country, immigrants. We had a workshop where we had the ideation processes, developing solutions, testing the solutions, testing them out with the real-life immigrants to see what they thought about it. And we are currently just evaluating and disseminating also and spreading the solution. So, and you can always go around and visit the different components of this model whenever needed. So the reference group was quite big. There were about 30 people there from different stakeholders. It was half open because what we figured out was we first started with maybe a group of 20, and then someone said, why aren't they on board? Why aren't this organization on board? And we said, yeah, we'll contact them. So it was an inclusive reference group. That was also important. We had focus groups with young immigrants in 5 regions, and we had, of course, a limit and set some criteria for the choice into the group. We had age, they had to have some language skills, and of course that was quite limiting the research. We know that, but we start with this group. And we were looking at this context of jobs, education, and society. We did a company survey. We sent out to 3,000 companies, but we only got very low response rates, so it's not very accurate. But we have some cues from them. Project conference, 86 participants from the Nordic countries also, and we have some material from there. And then we had also a feedback loop from the immigrants on the findings at last. The main challenges, that was the question, Bethina, that the immigrants found is generally there's a lack of information and guidance in Iceland. You go here and there and it's not coherent at all. There is also language and access to training. Most people that come to Iceland are at work, and also some extensive part also comes through family reunification nowadays. They also find that there are prejudices against them as immigrants, and it's really good for us to know that we who are trying to welcome immigrants, that even though we don't think we are showing prejudice, we have sort of a blind spot on how we do it, and we think we're not, but we have to be told, you know, that it is evident, that this is how I experience it. So that was an eye-opener, and we have some in-depth material on that. For work, they have a lot of experience with it. We have no overview of their skills. So we need to, in the initial welcoming, we need to do a much more skills audit towards what they have with them to help them into work that suits their learning and competences. Entering jobs was a very difficult thing for them to do. They don't have the networks that the Icelanders have, and they have to rely on informal networks that they don't know if are the right ones. And just giving a resume or needing someone to say that you're a good worker, they didn't have that with them. So that was one thing also. And on the job training, there was one quote from one of the participants that he said that he was working in this store, and he said, or the supervisor said, yeah, you just go to the register. And that was it. So he went to the register and had to figure things out himself, what to do and ask, and not having the language. So it was quite inconsistent also between people in the supervisor and the co-workers were not really supporting immigrants at work. So, and that has a lot to say on if you keep those workers. So it's a huge element for the companies to try to do better and more consistent. Of course it's done, but it's not consistent. And that's what immigrants feel, it's not consistent. And society, mostly support network and information has been mentioned here, and great examples that I'm taking home with me from the 2 days into this category. But you can see the recommendations, formalizing access to information, utilizing support to those who are immigrant information guides, because we have all these experienced people that are actually standing up and helping out their mates from the similar countries, but it's not formalized. But it actually has turned into a job for them, but they don't. Nobody's recognizing that. So that was also something that we're looking at. And support public spaces where people can network. That was the largest things. And then for the stakeholder group that we had, they also had a focus group with our colleague María Dille from Aalborg University in Denmark. She led the DBT, design-based research method. And they found out that after seeing the results from the immigrants and recognizing them and talking about them as a focus group, they found that there was a lack of leadership commitment in Iceland. There were unclear strategies, and it was all over the place, and there was no one specifically responsible. There were unbalanced priorities, and that has to go with the blind spots. There were a lot of blind spots people were discovering in this conversation, because in the beginning of the focus group, I took part in it as one of the coordinators. They were solely focusing on, you have to learn Icelandic, and then we can include you. But it's not a simple language, you know that. But what about society? If you don't feel that you belong or you have the connections and the networks, how are you going to utilize your Icelandic, or what's the motivation for you to learn? So this was a big one. It took a lot of discussion. Belonging as a focus both of policies and communities, and just generally us as humans moving towards that kind of a mindset to a larger degree. It's a heterogeneous group. We are a bit focused more on one-fits-all models, and we can't run that anymore with this large increase of people coming. So it's about motivation to learn. I think many Icelanders think that people, immigrants, don't want to learn Icelandic, because what happens when, for example, I would be speaking to an immigrant speaking Icelandic, I would very quickly jump into English, and then we would only have the conversation in English, because I didn't show the resilience to stay in the Icelandic and assist in that way. So, and then we think people don't want to learn Icelandic. So it was also a blind spot for the language part. You think people don't have the motivation. And identity struggles. Who am I in this context? Where do I belong, etc.? You know all of these factors. They have been mentioned here earlier. The company survey, and we found, what we learned from this, sending out to 3,000 companies with a low response rate, we need a focus group also with the companies. So, and I know that has been also done in the Nordic platform, so we need to look more into how companies are receiving and training immigrants. And what they were saying basically was that offer more informal Icelandic learning. And also they were sort of supporting that. Why not support them also in learning English? Because what they said was, if I know English, maybe it's easier for me to learn Icelandic. So give me that stepping stone, please. So that's also, but we are proud of our language, and then we have to deal with that, you know, protect the Icelandic, etc. But we can't forget that English can be the stepping stone, and also a stepping stone based on that you feel included. And technical solutions, yes, we have one app that's just getting all the awards in Iceland now. It's called Bara Tala, only speak. And it's helping companies with, they have like a word catalog linked to their jobs, so you have to implement it, but it's also an app that you, as an immigrant, can use on your own. So from the conference, there we have the leaders, María and Hróbjartur Árnason, researchers, and these were the actual results that you are very familiar with, I know, after these 2 days, so I don't have to repeat them. Maybe the mentors and information guides is a big one, I think. It's about how we see the Icelandic teaching. I would rather like to say Icelandic learning, because it's about the learning, but maybe not as much just teaching. On-the-site learning, and this is what we're looking into, like language mentors that has been introduced in Sweden and Norway, and we are taking that up now with our lifelong learning centers. And of course, we have a big issue with the schools because of the big numbers of children coming in, but also just what are our blind spots? Let's keep that as a subject to talk about that. And when we got the reflections from the immigrants back, they wanted to see that they would be an integral part of the solution process. Programs should not be viewed as quick fixes and avoid seeking one-size-fits-all solutions. It's a diverse group. So there are some demands out there that have actually gone into policy during the phase of this project, because there were so many stakeholders involved that it directly had this ripple effect. You can still see the ripple effect happening. A long list of dissemination, but I just want to highlight that we are currently, after 2024, looking at the ongoing developments in cooperation with the adult education field, the lifelong learning centers around the country, and shaping the solutions locally. I think that's definitely a key, because now they are taking this cycle and they can start locally in the regions and find their group of immigrants to come as end users and shape it in this, scale it down to the local community. And here you can see one example. It's called Give Icelandic a Chance, and it's an informal group that meets in an informal place regularly in the Ísafjörður, the western fjords. And this is where people get ideas, they hear about what's going on in the neighborhood, you get to discover each other's talents, etc. So that was a little bit long answer to your 2 questions. Thank you.
So we will welcome back the panelists, and we will continue with the Nordforsk funded project Nordic-Baltic, which stands for Integration or Return for Ukrainian Refugees. And we will just get back the chair back. Thank you. Okay, Aadne, you are a part of this project, and your project is comparing the refugee integration in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. And your project started in late 2023 and will end in 2026. And could you briefly tell us about the purpose and the background of this project?
Yes, as you said, we want to compare the 4 countries, not Iceland, unfortunately, not any of the Baltic countries is included, but this is something for the future, maybe. But what we want to look into is the reception and integration and future prospects of the Ukrainians living in these 4 countries. And why did we choose exactly these countries? Because as has been mentioned, they are quite similar. They have the Nordic welfare model, but they have still chosen quite different approaches to how the Ukrainians who have arrived in these countries should be received and what rights they have. Let's start with Denmark. I will not go very deep into it. You can find it in some of the policy reports that we have made, but they have traditionally been the more restrictive maybe of the countries. But in this, concerning the Ukrainians, they have granted the same rights as other refugee groups, whereas in Sweden, which has traditionally been the most liberal country, they have, as has been already mentioned, only given asylum rights to the Ukrainians, which means that they have fewer rights than other refugee groups, and they stay on asylum rights. Finland is a more middle position, where they get more rights after staying 1 year in the country. I must say, though, that in Sweden there have been some reforms lately, so there has been more liberal rules. Norway started off as maybe the most generous in terms of receiving Ukrainians, but then it turned out that the country got many more than all the other Nordic countries combined for a while in 2023. So then they started to have restrictions. So this, for example, about traveling back and forth to Ukraine, I think Norway is the only country in Europe that doesn't allow for that. Also, some areas of Ukraine have now been identified as safe, so people from these areas don't get collective protection in Norway, and so on. So with all these differences, we wanted to study the reception, and we do then policy analysis. We, in the Nordic countries, we are very lucky to have very good register data, so we are able to use those, but we have to wait a long time as researchers to get them, so we haven't started that. But what we have done is to conduct a survey to Ukrainian refugees, and also made a lot of interviews with Ukrainian refugees, in-depth interviews in these countries. So we speak about how they have been received, the integration into various social arenas, especially the labor market, the housing market, and so on. And also we ask about their future prospects in the country. So we have partners from Denmark and Sweden. I shall mention them: the Danish Center for Social Science Research, VIVE, and the Institute for Evaluation of Labor Market and Education Policy, IFAO, and the University of Eastern Finland.
Thank you. And what are the key findings from your project so far?
So we have already quite a few key findings. We have policy briefs on the policies, but my main responsibility in the project is the surveys that we have recently conducted, and we have just last week published a policy brief, and I will give maybe some highlights from this. It was a survey to more than 3,000 displaced Ukrainians. When we asked about why they came to the country, there were some differences. They first came to Sweden and Denmark because they had more friends and family there, whereas, for example, in Norway, it was very much about that they felt that the rights of Ukrainians are very well protected in Norway. Many came for security reasons, and education, children's education and future prospects was also high on the agenda. Very few regretted having coming to the Scandinavian countries, and people were generally very satisfied, or are very satisfied with both how they have been received, how the reception system functions, and that they feel welcome in the society. However, there are certain areas that stand out as more negative. For example, the public employment services are not as high as the other services evaluated, and also in terms of health services, maybe because of different health systems, it's difficult for Ukrainians in these countries to get, they feel the lack of access and different difficulties in finding specialized health services. And now the more controversial part, because Sweden, they have a a higher number of people who are self-sufficient, but we see the backside of this medal very much in our results. We have really documented very poorer results among refugees in Sweden compared to the other countries. So this is what you get maybe when you give fewer rights. So this is in terms of how they evaluate the reception system, how they in general evaluate the services, and maybe most important is that people are, or many people feel they are forced to go into the informal or grey labor market because they are really they cannot really live on what they get of public support. This we see clearly in our data that people. It's of course difficult to measure this, but we see clear patterns that more people say that they. That they have been approached to work in the informal sector, that they themselves have worked in the informal sector, or that they know of people who work in the informal sector. So these are some of the results. You can find more in the policy brief on our webpage.
Yeah, thank you. And how is your research from your project being used?
Yes, so we really want to have close contact with the users of our research. So what we did immediately was to invite people from public employment offices, from municipal organizations, from immigrant and integration services, and from also Ukrainian refugees' own organizations in the Nordic countries. To have a joint meeting and a workshop where we exchanged experiences. We get a better idea of what the situation is like in the various countries. We got input from them, what we should ask in our surveys, and also in the interview guides, in the interviews. And it was very much appreciated because it turned out that people did not really had not really communicated a lot even within their own countries and also across the countries. So they got a better understanding. And what was especially appreciated was that they got the voices of the Ukrainian refugees themselves. So, and we keep working on having close links with this, with the various users. Instead of course, we have academic ambitions, so we want to produce literature, academic journal articles, but we also put a lot of emphasis on writing policy briefs. We have already 3. We try to be active in media. So last week we have had op-eds in Dagens Nyheter, where we actually got on the front page about this situation with the informal economy in Sweden. So it was, we hope that it will be discussed. In Aftenposten we warned about, because in Norway there are many politicians who say that we should copy the Swedish example. So we show them some of the examples, what happens if you don't give rights. We also we also have produced blogs in the Hromada network and other international media outlets to tell about the situation in the Nordic countries.
Thank you, Aadne. We are looking forward to follow your project further on. And now a question for you all. After hearing each of your presentations in this panel, what do you think the Baltic and Nordic countries can learn from each other? Darta, will you start?
I think the question is easier for Baltics because the foreign project sort of by itself shows we, in the first foreign project we went to Denmark and Sweden and Finland to learn how these systems work. So I would say a systematic approach is something that the Baltic countries are learning right now, as we saw from the presentations of Ministry from Lithuania and other things that were discussed today. But the other way around, I can imagine there's also things that can be learned. I would say the Baltic region overall is, it's quite easy to make a seminar a pan-Baltic seminar with all of the countries there in Riga or Tallinn or Vilnius. We've done pan-Baltic seminars on integration issues for, I think, the last 2 years, and I guess maybe that is something that can be examples of collaboration this close. And I heard in this conference that the ministries that are in charge of integration in the Baltics have MS Teams meetings each month. Yeah, so it's I can imagine that the collaboration is really close, and I think not only Nordic region but overall the more collaboration is carried out, the better. And I think that is something that has been told already in this conference as well.
Fjóla and Aadne, do you have a reply or anything to add?
Well, yes, I agree. And I think that it's a cultural exchange in itself to meet like this in person. So I very much appreciate being here with you. I think maybe we have in different ways experienced being an immigrant, maybe through studies, etc. But learning together is a very efficient way to move things forward and also discover our own blind spots. And we sort of keep throwing this word out in Iceland now after this project, this blind spot issue, because you can't discover it without reflecting with others, your own blind spots. So, and I'm taking a lot with me back home. I have been sending pictures to my colleagues of your slides, and we will definitely contact someone for our annual conference this year. And I see a lot of possibilities of just getting all of the ideas. Yeah, I hope this continues, and maybe some theme comes out of this conference. I don't know how it will be closed, but there are certainly a lot of things and new things for me to digest.
Aadne?
Yes, I think both from working on Hromada and from this conference, there are lots of things that we can learn from each other. I think in terms of the work that we are doing, we can learn from the Baltic countries that have received many more Ukrainian refugees than we have. We think that we have received so many Ukrainian refugees, but the Baltic states per capita have received many more. And I think that, for example, the way that they have done so with challenges, of course, but quite successfully after all, and the way that civil society is mobilized in this area is something that we can really learn from in the Nordic countries. And maybe Baltic countries can learn from us that we have longer experience with working with refugees. We have some systems and models that maybe can be used, and I think you are already using in the Baltic countries. But I also having listened to presentations and also discussed in breaks, I think that it would be really interesting to do a project on where we include the Baltic countries and the Nordic countries on youth and young Ukrainian refugees, because there is a gap there. We always hear about their situation from the adults, and they face actually special challenges because they don't know how long they are going to stay in our region, at the same time as they are going to make a lot of very important decisions for their life and their future lives. So should they, how much should they be integrated into the Ukrainian educational system, continue with studying Ukrainian? Does that take a lot of time that should rather be used to integrate and get friends, social, learning the Scandinavian or Nordic languages and so on? So I think this is something that we could actually develop. And I hope that Nordforsk will take this idea and give funding for it.
Thank you. Fjóla, how can we ensure that young immigrants actively participate in shaping the solution that affect their lives and in shaping policies? Do you have any reflection on that?
I think in the scope of this project, and a project now it's being implemented, and we've talked about it these days, that what happens after a project. And I think that really looking at and trying to bring forth the voices of specific target groups is of high importance, but it's also a matter of when do we stop talking about target groups and just have this total acceptance of diversity in its many pictures. So it's a real concern that you were mentioning, Aadne, about the young people that are taking these big life decisions at young age in another country, and they don't know what the future is. So I think like in some of the lifelong learning centers in Iceland, they have become like this center then for like a coffee house for immigrants to come and shape their ideas through reflections. And maybe we need the platform from the young people in that regard specifically. So and they have been asking for like pop-up cafes. They want to connect. They connect much further. They use social media. They are faster in their language learning, and they are using AI very generously, more than us who are older. So I think we need to sort of hear what they have to say to understand what needs to be done. So listen to the voices of the users is a big thing.
And I will close this session by saying a big thank you to the panelists for providing these interesting examples from the Nordic-Baltic region on how data generated from research can be used to develop solutions for real-world problems, improve policies, and inform decision makers. And I hope this session has been inspiring for you and that it will also stimulate for more future research collaborations in the Nordic-Baltic region. In a world that has becoming increasingly polarized, research cooperation is great of importance, especially in the Nordic-Baltic region. And please feel free to reach out to these researchers in the lunch afterwards, because we have to finish now. So thank you. Thank you.